All right, we are live. We've got Elon in Saudi Arabia making a lot of comments. We've got Tesla busting through the 300 straight to the 330s. I think everyone watching is going to be in a pretty good mood because of that. We got lots of stuff to get into today. So maybe we can start off with the rally, Bradford. Surprised at all that everyone was feeling down and sad just like a week ago? I think something like a 20% rally in the last week. Does that surprise you at all?
Not really. We saw some things in the technicals with Tesla that showed that Tesla could potentially reclaim all-time highs pretty shortly. I think that'd be pretty aggressive if that happened. So we're not surprised that Tesla is rallying on very little news. Actually, kind of a little bit of negative news with China. The amount of local sales is pretty low. Guessing they're still exporting for the quarter, but the overall production for April was pretty low in China. Yeah, I'd say I'm not surprised that Tesla is rallying on no news or slightly negative news because of just how beaten down it had gotten.
Yeah. So, I think the talk of all-time high, that sounds a little aggressive at this point too. Do you think end of year potentially, or just too soon to tell?
I'm not sure. I think there might be a bit of a run-up prior to June 1st when Tesla AI is hyping up that they'll start in Austin June 1st. They said 31 days until June or June 1st or something like that. So I think there could be a run-up, and my overly specific short-term thoughts are like it may run up in advance, but then that exact week before, there may be a bit of a down, maybe a bit of like a letdown going into the event. So I think if I'm remembering the We Robot event, there was a big move up, but then like the week before is actually down that week before. So we might see a bit of a replay of that.
Yeah, well, and I think right after the event too, it was down pretty hard. I think people were disappointed by the event itself. There was like some of that was honestly just like the weird health issue that happened that caused it to be really significantly delayed. So they had to rush through some stuff, and it maybe wasn't as polished as they were originally planning it to be for that reason. But then there was also kind of expectations of, will there be an extra like vehicle introduced, and will like a Tesla minivan or something like that. So there were all sorts of speculations, like maybe a partnership might get announced. And instead, we just got like a pretty compelling working demo of the Robotaxi, along with a lot of the in-person Optimus kind of interactions. So
and the
Robovan, that's true.
It wasn't a cyber van though.
I know it was Robovan, which will finally fit my family. So I'm eager for that to get to market because our Ford Transit is wearing down.
It can seat 14 to 20, so you're at 9. You got a little more work to do.
Thanks for the tip. We'll leave those extra spaces for friends and family. I think our family's in a good spot right now. Appreciate that though. So Elon's in Saudi Arabia. Lots of stuff going on that front right now. The thing that was probably most interesting to me was the talk of robotaxis being launched in Saudi Arabia. The actual words himself that he used were not quite so committal. It was something like Elon said something to the effect of, well, if you are open to it, like we'll launch robotaxis here. And then the interviewer was like, all right, well, you heard it here first, folks, robotaxis in Saudi Arabia. So to me, it didn't exactly sound. Oh, we got the clip right here. Oh, that's
we can't play that whole thing, but yeah. So you can find it there. Doge Designer has it. A bunch of accounts have the video. It's about 8 minutes long. It's pretty short. So my memory of the Robotaxi portion, Matt, is that the interviewer asked Elon if they'll have the Robotaxi in Saudi Arabia, and I think Elon was like, "Yep," or "Sure," or something like that.
I think he said if it's all right with you, we'd something like that. It was like it was some weird kind of caveat. It didn't sound to me like there was a firm plan. Like, okay, Austin in June and Saudi Arabia in July. Like, I think this is more. We're definitely going to launch it internationally, but I don't think it was a kind of breaking news the way that I saw some X accounts kind of post it.
Mm-hmm. They also seem eager to get their hands on some Optimus. You know, Elon was talking about Optimus and how it's a productivity multiplier, can greatly increase productivity because divide by the number of humans. So Elon got to pitch Optimus. That could be another reason why the stock is up today. Like he's getting in front of the wealthiest people in the world, and maybe they're finally starting to get it. Maybe they'll put a million or two in the Tesla stock and just kind of watch it for a bit.
Yeah, I'm not much of a kind of technical trader, watching flows or anything like that. But just given the price action today, I mean, it did seem a little bit like you had some large institutional buying throughout the day. But I think it's not only Elon being in front of that large crowd, but I mean, there was also that video of Optimus dancing that was posted that a lot of people were saying like it's actually like that looks fake. I mean, how rapid those motions have to be like on the feet to be able to like be able to handle that level of motion that quickly. Like that shows me two things. One, like the hardware is actually incredible that everything can actuate that quickly and in such coordination. But two, the bigger thing is the training, like that they've been able to actually get it to train this well. Now, like this is obviously a bit of a party trick. Like that's not economically useful. But what is useful is having full control of your body. I mean, you look at the pictures of Optimus even a year ago when they were releasing some videos, and it was like somebody made the comment, which kind of cracks me up. It's like it walks like it's got a stick up its butt, and it's like kind of true. It's just like it's like very rigid, and it looks like it really doesn't know what to do.
That needed to go poop.
Yeah, like there's some major constipation going on with the gait of Optimus, and if you're able to like move that quickly and that gracefully, I mean, I think graceful is the right adjective to describe the way that that was moving. That's a skill set that's going to be transferable to a lot of different types of work. So the body control that their software appears to have been capable of is really impressive. And I think all the more so because this is not like the Boston Dynamics robot where they've like just juiced it up with like massive motors and like a huge battery pack. And so it can just do all this crazy stuff, and they've hard programmed it. I'm sure they did hard program that dance routine in there. But I don't think you would have been able to do that without some really detailed simulation training to get the capabilities and the body control to a sufficient level where it'd be capable of that. So I was actually really impressed. And I think a lot of the comments in there were like, oh, like Elon's posting fake videos, even from some bulls. That was kind of telling, I think, that they're actually pretty far along on this front. Yeah. So I think some people might be getting FOMO on Optimus.
Let's show the video again. So I want to mention a couple things. So there's some people who zoomed in on that left foot. So the foot that's on our right, the left foot, the toe is actually flexing, and they use the toe to spring up. So and I think there's portions where the robot technically doesn't have either foot on the ground, or maybe it like slightly has like an angle of its left foot on the ground. So the level of balance is really impressive. We can see it's hooked up to a thing to keep it from falling. So we don't know how many takes it took to do this. So I think the foot, the toe press is coming soon if you keep pushing through the frames. Right here is coming, maybe, or no. So the version before this, the Optimus had a flat foot. So this foot is new. And so I'm looking forward, if Scott Walter comes out of retirement, you can stop share. if he comes out of retirement, I'd love to hear his thoughts on the foot. Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with what we're seeing, and the ability to train and simulation is something that Jim Fan of NVIDIA has been hyping up, but it's real. There's a lot of companies that are able to sim to a walk for the robots, so they unlock the gate of the Optimus with simulation. And then to be able to zero shot it, where your zero shot means that you're not having to make an adjustment once it comes into the real world, so that the physics and the simulated sensor data and that in the simulated dance is that it's correct enough so that when it actually experiences real world physics, it's not off by too much. So that's what zero shotting means, is they don't have to make that adjustment. So it's really impressive.
And I think it's actually extremely important for real world economics. I mean, I kind of am thinking back to the earlier videos we saw, even like the one where it was like doing like the pack in place of the cells. Which way is my camera going here? You know, and it would just kind of like go up like this, and then like go and like put it in, and like, oh, I put it in a little like awkwardly, so let me fix it. It's like, it kind of reminds me of watching my kids all sit at the table, and like, you know, the 2-year-old like has really hard time kind of stabbing his food with the fork because he doesn't have great motion control over his body yet. But as the kids get older, you know, it's more graceful and they can eat a lot more efficiently. And I think you're seeing the same sort of thing with Optimus, where it's got a lot more confidence in its control, the control of its body. And so when you're translating to real world tasks, that means you'll be able to like pack the 4680s a lot more quickly. So like maybe you can even do 2 hands the way a human would, and kind of go like that, instead of like like, oh, I'm going over here. No, I'm going to go this way. No, I'm going to go down. And so when you think of like the economic use case of that, okay, how efficient are you being relative to a real world worker? If you can actually move at roughly the speed that a human can for a particular task, then you're going to be like directly offsetting the cost of a human worker. Or said another way, you'll be providing the value of a human worker at like roughly comparable like dollar per hour economics. But if it's so much more slow and like it breaks down sometimes and it gets confused and it needs help, then like the value proposition in terms of like dollars per hour is going to be a lot lower. So it's really important that they get this figured out. And I'm actually surprised. I just kind of assumed it would not be as efficient as a human worker for a while. So I was really impressed by that.
Well, we'll see if this carries over. So the more variety of tasks they show it, the faster it can learn each task, and allegedly the faster it gets at each task. It'd be cool if it could use both hands. So like a human worker would try to pick up both hands and like be placing them like quick like that. Or be like chunking it like this. So you're doing that. You're doing 2 batteries at once. So, or if they're just like testing batteries, you could have 2 battery testers and test 2 at a time. So, you know, these things are important for productivity because you want it to be at least as fast as a human. And then if you could unlock it so that it's 2 or 3 or 4 times faster, that would be pretty sick.
We need to do like an I Love Lucy test where you just have like a conveyor belt of chocolates going, and then you just gradually increase the speed. And then that can set like a capability of like, at what point does the first chocolate fall on the floor? And you could gauge other robots by that. I think that'd be pretty cool to see.
Should have competitions as well.
All right, that'd be awesome.
Cybertruck's in Qatar. So Unplugged Performance, I think, was talking about some deal with Qatar, which is pretty awesome. So I'm guessing it'll be like police vehicles or government vehicles.
Yeah, so this is cool. I agree, but I don't think it's going to move the needle drastically on volume. And I'm still of the opinion that Cybertruck is a commercial flop. I know you told me it was too early to say that before, but we've got, you know, new lower price variants, and you can still get one very quickly in terms of delivery times, and the deliveries have been, you know, not where I think Bulls thought they'd be. So Cybertruck, cool news. but I think we had the news last week that the range extender was being canceled. Maybe they're just not seeing enough volume to really make that make sense as an additional add-on product. So I don't know. I'm a bit bearish on Cybertruck overall, to be honest with you. Even though it is a great car, and I kind of wish I had one. Am I dead to you?
We'll see.
How long? How many quarters of bad deliveries do we need to have before you might concede that it's a commercial flop?
Well, maybe it's 4680. So,
well, it's not supply constrained. That's my whole point. Is if it was 4680 being the problem, then we'd have long wait times and no inventory. But instead, we've got low deliveries and still a huge amount of inventory.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what the wait time is, but it's not showing me right now.
Last I checked, it was 1 to 3 weeks. That might have changed, but I suspect not.
We'll see.
All right. Well, moving on to the thing I got pretty excited about, which we haven't heard much on Boring Company recently, but we had this video, and I don't think we actually have it ready to go here, but a fully automated boring line. Ooh, we do have it. So maybe not the video, but this is the 0 person in tunnel. I don't know why we need an acronym for that, but the first Z-pit configuration. Yay.
The world needs another acronym.
Yeah, didn't Elon like ban acronyms at most of his companies except for like rapidly unscheduled disassembly?
He's got to pay them a visit.
Yeah, I think so. But we saw the video of this thing, and it is honestly really impressive because you've just got this thing fully automated, not only kind of turning and grinding out the hole that it's boring, but also layering in the support walls and then excavate, or I don't know, conveying out the waste rock sludge. And so that's the holy grail, as this post says, is really that full automation in a similar way to full reusability is the holy grail for rockets. So this is a really big deal. It's going to significantly improve the economics of having tunnels, and I do think that in the long run, this is going to become really important as robotaxis. I think it was Ashok had a post today that like robotaxis are going to increase congestion on the roads because even though the vehicles are more efficient, overall demand is going to increase because they're going to be so cheap, and so that's going to lead to more congestion. And tunnels are honestly the best answer to that problem. So
or Robovan on your long stretches, right?
Well, yeah, it won't be just one thing. Like I think Robovan for a city center, kind of doing something similar to what a city bus does right now, and it would do that at much better economics and pricing than even a city bus would right now. And it would presumably be able to take you directly to your destination instead of just like, oh, here's our stop, and we drop you, and then you walk like the last 3 blocks to wherever it is you're actually going. It could take everyone's point of where you're going and like through a very simple algorithm, figure out like the best place to drop them all off. So a better experience at a lower price. I think that's kind of the end goal for Robovan.
Or the bus can go to a spot where there's a bunch of robotaxis waiting.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think that would make a lot of sense for like events in particular too. I mean, if you've got like a concert or like a football game or something like that, get a bunch of Robovans to like bring people into and out of the stadium so that you're not just congesting all the traffic ways right there in the parking lots, and then bring them to the outskirts of the city where there's either their car or a cyber cab ready to take them to their ultimate end destination. So I think it's in combination with like the tunnels, like I think there's going to be so much that's changing. It's not like Cybercab alone solves everything and like we're just like off to the races. I think that's probably the right solution for 80% of the market and like 80% of use cases maybe. But there's going to be a lot more that we need on the edges, on the periphery, to really make the whole transportation system more efficient, more cost competitive, and just a better overall user experience. So I'm getting pretty pumped about the future. There was a lot of news this week about Elon's initiatives.
So you think about the freeways where they get congested. It's where you have these merges. So if you can just like completely skip the freeway and take people to like after the exit, that would be pretty killer. So you're completely skipping the merge, and you have some kind of depot that's inside the exit. You don't have to deal with all that. I think that'd be cool. I want to talk a little bit about Austin. I had a little realization. So I've been doing my Tesla Uber experiment where I'm running my new Model Y that's AI4, and I'm running that as an Uber. So I'm the driver or supervisor, and I'm doing it for a couple reasons. I want to see like how good is it at driving? Is it getting us from A to B safely? And what are some of the driver attitudes around if it was self-driving and there was no one even in the driver's seat to supervise? And what happened is last Friday I got dumped. I took someone to the airport, and then IU Bloomington, so like the Hoosiers, they were having a graduation that weekend. So I took someone from the airport all the way to Bloomington, and that happens to be like 50 minutes. So it's a long stretch. Wow. So like the airport is 40 minutes from my house, and then Bloomington is another 40 minutes down. So it's like combined like an hour and a half from my house. And so I was kind of stuck in this college town. So I decided to stick around and do a bunch of rides. And ride shares are really popular in college towns. And guess what kind of city Austin is?
College town.
College town. Sorry, ruined that one for you. So there's a ton of rides, students going back and forth. A lot of students don't have a vehicle when they're at college, so they'll take a taxi or a ride share. So they're pretty popular there. That does bring a fair bit of competition, where a lot of Uber or Lyft drivers will want to serve that market because it's a bunch of short rides, and those can be more profitable. But I think it's a really good thing that Tesla is starting off in Austin.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be a lot of learnings there. We had a conversation with a client, which we can't talk too much about, but he's similarly doing Uber driving in a college town, and shared some pretty good insights. So I think we're in this kind of heavy data gathering mode, which Tesla is going to be in very shortly, as well as they're launching in Austin. But I think it's all about trying to figure out the way that this market is going to work. But we're literally weeks away now from them launching. It is a pretty exciting time, and this is real. So I'm pretty excited. One other thing I wanted to talk about, unless anything else on Robotaxi before I switch topics on you.
No, let's hit the macro or whatnot.
No, I'm switching completely. So Elon's talking about power generation. So he had this post about adding a terawatt of generation capacity, and what's like the most efficient way to do this. I'm trying to figure out if he's doing this as like is this just like a thought exercise of like, if you did need to add a terawatt of power generation, what would be the best way to do it? Or if he has some pretty massive ambitions. So total US generating capacity is about 1.3 terawatts. So talking about like effectively like almost a doubling of the entire US capacity. He did mention in a separate tweet that or post that you could basically do this with 10 starships, which is like kind of nutty, but also I want to point out like that's not really practical in any way, shape, or form. So I think what he's doing is saying like, okay, what's the total thrust that's going out of the bottom of the starships? And you can convert that. There's a power associated with it, and then you can convert that power in newtons to megawatt hours or terawatt hours. Or I guess in this case, because he's talking about terawatts, it would just be terawatts. Like, what's the static level? So like 10 starships, I guess to make it exactly equal, you could have 13 starships essentially power the entire United States. Is kind of what he's saying. I want to point out like that is not true, because you have to take that power and then convert that to electricity. And they're like, that would be a whole other set of issues and very difficult things to figure out. Then on top of that, you've got like the entire fuel flow. So, I mean, you think of how quickly that Starship burns through the massive amount of like liquid oxygen and CH4 that, or is it CH4? I forget what is the propellant. It's methane. That is CH4, I think,
especially the super heavy when it's all together on the super heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, sure, you could maybe do that, but like, I mean, that thing runs out of fuel, and that's a massive vehicle that runs out of fuel in about 5 minutes. So like, that's I think he's giving you an idea of how powerful Starship is, not necessarily like that's a practical application that we could consider rolling out at scale. Because I mean, the fuel flows you'd need, the cooling you'd need, and then you still haven't solved the problem of how do you actually convert that into electricity. With that being heat, you would essentially have to like torch that and into some pipes to make a boiler to turn a steam turbine to make electricity. So I don't think that's actually what he's thinking. But I do think he's giving serious consideration to, like, from first principles, we've got all these issues that everyone's very well aware of like, the transmission constraints, the interconnect queue and how long that takes, actual transformers and like the huge bottleneck around those. So if you want to move fast and build a bunch of new data centers and frankly, just increase power capacity, because aside from data centers and AI and that whole trend, like increasing power generation is correlated very directly with like increases in employee benefits of citizen shareholder. What am I talking about? I can't finish my sentences. Citizen like happiness or prosperity. Because if you've got cheap electricity, you can do a lot of things more cheaply, and that cause a better quality of life than if you can't. So I'll get off my rant because I'm apparently not able to speak anymore. But curious what your thoughts were on that post from Elon.
Yeah, he's been heavily interacting with a Jesse Pelton on X, and we might be seeing Jesse soon on a certain channel with maybe Matt and James Dalma and somebody else soon.
Jordan Gisagi, I think.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, I don't know if we're supposed to be talking about this, so maybe this is all just rumors.
Little rumor. So that's coming. Jesse Pelton, Peltan. Just follow him on X for thoughts about solar power, Kardashev level 1 civilizations, like harnessing the power of the sun, thoughts on solar versus nuclear. I think Elon might be serious, Matt.
Serious about building a terawatt, or serious about doing it with starships?
Yeah. So, Colossus, despite its huge size, is less than a gigawatt. So I think he's really excited about what, like the simulation to real world for Optimus. And I don't know if you need all the compute in one thing to like quickly train to add that piece to the model. So then you can add another sim to real thing to the model. I'm not sure if it has to be sequential. But I also think Elon's excited about the progress that XAI is making with their intelligence. He's really excited about like the AI being able to take a first principles approach, like to logic and things like that it's going to excel in an IQ test, whereas right now the AIs, I think at best are like 124 on an IQ test or something like that. So I think Elon's really bowled up and he's wanting to get more compute.
So
the last point I want to make here is, like, every time he's gotten more compute, he has delivered.
Yeah,
every time.
That was what I was going to ask you, actually. So I think I remember seeing somewhere that that Colossus data center was going from 100,000 GPUs to 200,000. Is that right? Do you recall seeing that also?
Yeah, and they may have done that already, but they want to take it to 1 million. But
how do they? how are they getting the power for this right now? Is it just diesel gen sets that they're doing? Like, I know they put a bunch of mega packs in at first, but like you can't, like you also need the power generation. You can't just like have mega packs. So where are they getting all this power generation? Because like, we've been following a couple voices in the space, basically saying that like GE Vernova, which makes a lot of these gas turbines, is basically sold out until 2030. Now that's a little anecdotal. I'm not sure that that's exactly true or not, but like at bare minimum, there's a lot of demand for all this power generation equipment. And so like it's just a lot of gas generators to hook up, and those are very inefficient. So first of all, like huge amount of emissions, because you know you're not like using the natural gas as efficiently as you otherwise could. But also, I think the bigger piece is just the economics of it are not that great when you've got a oh, okay, there it is. Oh, that was in October. So yeah, maybe they're well past the 200,000 mark now.
And there's an S.E. Robinson tweet where he posts about the plans for a million cluster at Colossus.
Yeah, so like the thing with these diesel, I really am having trouble talking today. The thing with these diesel gen sets is like they might have a very low capital cost compared to like building something else, but the fuel efficiency is terrible, and that has a very real impact. So like the best gas turbines in the world that are something like what's called combined cycle gas turbines, where you actually like you spin a very efficient gas turbine and then you take the waste heat and you spin a steam generator with that waste heat. Those have a heat rate of like 6,000 BTUs per kilowatt hour, something. I forget the exact conversion, but what that means is basically you take your price of natural gas, let's say that's $3, and you multiply that by the 6 on the heat rate, and that gives you like a electricity cost input of about $18 per megawatt hour. If you have a diesel genset and like let's say the heat rate's, I don't know, 15 or something like that, you're going to have $45 just on the fuel cost alone, plus all the other like inputs and plus the emissions. And so like, there's a very real cost to kind of going fast, but not doing it efficiently. And I just think that there needs to be a better solution than what these companies are doing right now to kind of bridge the short-term gap.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the agreement is, but I know they're getting some power from the Tennessee Valley Authority, but there's some kind of like fallback where if TVA needs the power, then Colossus will cede the power to the TVA. So they're getting a lot of it from like the dam in the TVA region, the hydroelectric. But yeah, they brought in a lot of generators there as well.
I think that's a really important point, though, that if TVA can't serve them, then like they need to reduce load. I think that's a really big piece of the equation that I think the data centers are going to have to start accepting, because like they are becoming such a big part of the overall grid, and frankly, they're accelerating faster in terms of new demand than these other sectors. So if you want like guaranteed like 99.99% uptime from your electricity supply, that's going to be very expensive relative to being a little bit more flexible and saying, okay, I'm willing to take some downtime when the grid is in real stress, and TVA or whoever the grid operator is just says like, we've got more demand than we have like backup supply. So I need you, data center, to go down for these 4 hours tomorrow in order to help us alleviate this issue. If the data centers can be a little bit more flexible and provide that what's called capacity, essentially, or demand response back to the grid, that's highly valuable, and I think that's going to create a lot lower like cost of serving the electricity to these data centers. But that said, that can be hard on your GPUs. So you need to have a system in place of how do you manage that. And maybe one way you can manage that is by having just like a ton of mega packs to bridge that gap and help you kind of wind down slowly. But it's there's no clear answer here to me, and it's something we've been spending a lot of time on.
So I want to ask you a question here. So T. Nelly asked about Saudi Arabia, doing a huge solar array, and maybe we could just plug in a bunch of wires and have them power the world. What do you think about that? Or siting the GPUs in the Saudi Arabian desert.
So I think that actually goes really closely with this other comment that I was seeing. So solar is so screamingly the answer. China is still relocating supply chain here. Trump is perhaps inadvertently accelerating solar with tariffs. Like solar is the cheapest in terms of dollar per megawatt hour, but what you actually need is like these data centers are base load, which means they are running at like 95 to 100% capacity. Solar, it can meet their demand like this. So like there's big chunks of the day when that's not available. So you either need batteries, and if you need batteries, then you need a huge amount of batteries, or you need longer duration batteries and still a huge amount of them. Or like you need solar coupled with wind and some other stuff. So the problem, like I agree that solar just makes a lot of sense, and solar is going to continue to do extremely well. But I started doing a lot of the math of like, okay, how many batteries would you need to basically turn solar into like base load? And it's like extremely expensive. Jigar Shah, who used to run the DOE's loan program office, and he's been a leading voice in energy for a long time. He had this rant on this maybe a month ago on this podcast I was listening to that was phenomenal. He was basically saying like, okay, there's lots of different ways that you can solve this problem. Like you can do solar with a bunch of batteries. It turns out if you like appropriately size that, it works out to about $100 per megawatt hour to get to like to turn solar into base load. You can do the same thing, solar plus wind. Turns out you need some batteries for that, and when you put it all together, it winds up being about $100 per megawatt hour. You can do like utility interconnect. That's about $100 per megawatt hour, but it takes a little bit longer. Or you can do like geothermal. And like Fervo is a great company out there that's just starting to do some pricing right now. And like the commentary that Jigar was making is, turns out they're pricing that at about $100 per megawatt hour. So it's like you basically, if you want firm power, you're going to have to pay about $100 per megawatt hour. And I just don't think there's any way around that. So I think a little bit of a mindset shift I've been having recently is taking the levelized cost of energy, which is like, you take your solar panels and you project out how much electricity you're going to generate, and then you project out all your costs, and then you divide the total cost by the total generation, and you get a levelized cost of energy that's like $18 maybe. You're like, oh, well, that's clearly going to win all day, and it will, except that you need to get that power where it needs to be consumed. And the cost of doing all that is like maybe another $80. So, or you have to like overbuild the solar and like some combination of things. So I think changing mindset from just looking at the cost of the generation to really looking at the total cost to deliver that power to the customer who needs it. That's what I'm trying to spend my attention on this topic right now.
So I have a dumb question.
Go for it.
When we were talking about, and this was a number of years ago, when casuals were mining Bitcoin or Ethereum, there's this whole social responsibility or environmental responsibility about that causing global warming. So I'm curious, like, let's say you have a natural gas turbine or something else with natural gas, and that creates heat, and then you have this steam turbine that I'll use the wrong term, recaptures or utilizes recaptures the heat. Okay. Are you still like heating the earth? Is there still like waste heat that's exiting the whole thing? Will we still be heating up the planet? Or
so I think the concern from those voices was more about the CO2 emissions. And you have roughly the same amount of CO2 emissions. I guess the reason that a what's called combined cycle, where you have that more efficient system, you're getting more electricity per unit of fuel. So your CO2 emissions per megawatt hour are a little bit lower with that type of plant. And then, your waste heat just to the atmosphere is obviously lower because you're using that productively to heat up some water. Now, the downside of that is then you've got some hot water that you need to condense and you need to discharge back into a body. So that needs to be monitored, but that's not too big of a deal in most situations. So generally speaking, the CO2 emissions are still there. But obviously the more efficient you can be, the better.
So crazy thought. And this comes from the Eric, the co-founder of Google. What's his last name? I'm spacing.
I'm a total space cadet today, so don't ask me for memory. I don't know what is going on with my ability to talk.
Yeah, the Eric guy with the glasses. He's a little older than Sergey and Larry. He was like the CEO, so he wasn't like the co-founder that the two were, but he was like the CEO that came in. He talks about bringing data centers into space. So like if you have waste heat, then it happens in space and you can get the cooling. Eric Schmidt.
There we go.
Yeah. So that's also an interesting thought. Maybe you need a bunch of starships to get the data centers into space, and then you can get your cooling that way.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds crazy, but if you get the cost of launch down low enough, that could actually be pretty compelling. You might have some issues with what do you do with waste heat from your compute? So that would need to be figured out. I'm sure initially that would be a lot more expensive, but in the long run, I could see something like that, which sounds crazy, actually working out.
Yeah.
I was actually listening to another energy podcast a while ago, and they were talking about space-based solar, which sounds crazy, but like the idea is if you have it in
how
the right
does that
orbit,
not heat up our planet? Like you're transmitting energy back to Earth. I guess that's what the sun does all the time, but so directed, I don't know, microwave or whatever.
Yeah, you can actually, I believe it was with microwaves that they've demonstrated you could actually like send the power back via microwaves to these towers that could then like collect it and take it where it needs to go. Sounds totally crazy, and I think when you scale up, you run into some real problems with like frying some stuff. So I'm skeptical that this actually makes sense, but I think kind of following some of these rather out there ideas is pretty interesting, because I think in the long run, we need a lot more compute. We need a lot more electricity generation. That seems pretty clear to me. So I'm all for people trying some rather crazy things, and most of it probably won't work, but some of it eventually will. I think you and I have thrown a little bit of shade at SMRs recently too, because they're not scalable. Or I shouldn't say they're not scalable. There's no working prototypes right now. We're years away. We've still got regulatory red tape. And so I think this is not a real solution in, say, the next 5 years. But in 10, 15, 20 years, I think that's great. And I'm glad people are researching it. It's just not something I would want to touch with a 10-foot pole as an investor right now.
If people want to play around with this idea quite literally, there's a game called Dyson Sphere Game, where essentially you're grabbing all this mass and energy, and you end up creating a constellation around a star in the game. So you're quite literally like capturing the energy that the star is emitting. So it's like one of those logistics games, and it's pretty interesting. Anyways, Matt, you want to talk a little bit about inflation? I have something else I want to share in a second.
Yeah, we can probably be pretty brief here, but inflation came in today at 2.2%. I think it was 2. Yeah, I think it was
2.3.
I thought it was 2.2. Okay, it's 2.3, I guess, which was one basis, or which was 0.1% better than analysts were expecting. The core was a little bit better than analysts were expecting too, and lowest number since early 2021. So it's been 4 years of fighting this inflation boogeyman, and it feels like now we're finally on the right side of this. So I think that was part of the reason why we saw markets rally a bit today. Right when that dropped at 8:30, you did see a bit of a spike, and it wouldn't surprise me if that was what fueled a bit of the rally later on today. So if inflation is contained more or less, then that gives the Fed a little bit more latitude to cut rates, which I think a lot of industry watchers and analysts are thinking they will do, but this perhaps makes it a little bit more probable that they actually will pull the trigger and do so in the upcoming meetings.
But one little wrinkle may be trucking. Transportation is the lifeblood of the economy besides energy. And we did have the whole like pre-stocking before the tariffs came. And there may be an issue with trucking that comes up in about a month. where the price of getting trucks from like California to the rest of the country is going to be pretty elevated for a while. And I'm guessing like the price of shipping containers from China to the US is going to be pretty spicy for a bit. China's going to want to flood the box for 90 days.
Yeah, so I'm curious though. I mean, presumably a bit of that would be in the April numbers. Now, I haven't looked at the sector by sector on that. I was just going to try to pull that up because you had a lot of that rushing in before the. Although no, I guess that was when was Liberation Day, like April 2nd. So that wouldn't have really impacted those numbers. So that's a good point.
So the trucking died down, so it came way down, and then the trucking people are saying it's going to spike way up. So like getting a truck from California is going to be difficult. We'll see what happens. I like my avocado, and my daughter likes mango right now. She's on a mango kick. I don't know where that comes from though. The mango. I want to share a bit a meme we shared on X. It was a little bit of a fun meme that was going around, and we added our own little thing to it. So if you have it, yeah. So this was going around, and people were talking about how they bought the dip in various ways for Tesla or for stocks when the market was low. So, Dan Ives greatly reduced his share price on Tesla, mainly because Tesla went down. So he was just like chasing the stock.
I want to spend just a minute on Dan Ives here because like he I think deserved a lot of credit. He had what was it, a $520 or $560 share price target, something like that.
550, yeah.
That he introduced in, I want to say it was March sometime, which was like he was really sticking his neck out there, but just basically saying like their AI chops are real, they're going to do it. And then all these tariff concerns came, and then all of a sudden he's like, well, Elon really needs to step up here. And it was like,
yeah, he needs to get out of politics and like be full-time CEO again.
So he like after sticking his neck out there to then go and retreat like literally a month later just because the stock moved down, it was like I get it, but the just the I would respect him a lot more if he just like stuck with it and be like, you know what, there's a little bit of uncertainty. I'm not sure in the next 2 months where we'll be, but we really like our price target long term because we believe in what they're doing with AI. Instead of that, he caved and lowered the price target.
Yeah, I think sometimes these Wall Street people, they get pressure from clients and they cave a bit. We've seen it with some other people where they turn turncoat on Tesla because of client pressure. Gene Munster, who's been pretty balanced about Tesla, but it's been kind of a bull over time. He ended up turning, and so did Jim Cramer.
Cramer, I don't think anyone should be surprised by, but Munster and Dan Ives, I was a little bit frustrated by. But yeah, they all panicked. It was like stock goes down, and whatever we said before, we don't really believe in, and that was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, and in general, and you can stop the share now. Like I was pretty disappointed by the coverage that happened on April 7th and 8th. I mean, it allowed us the buying opportunity that we got, where people on Wall Street were just panicking, and I'd say like the financial media really doesn't do anyone favors. They focus on the drama and they accentuate it. So if the market's down, they tend to be very negative and they flash a bunch of red on the screen. When it's soaring, it's all green and everyone's like joking and laughing. And so, I think it's important to pay attention to those things when we're at like bottoms or highs.
Yeah, and I think like so much of your returns are made by your decisions when fear is at a high. and like having a level head there, I think is extremely important. So I don't think you touched on the last thing that was in that meme, which was, Rebellionaire chilled and bought call spread. So do you want to shed a little light on kind of our approach?
So it's different than just buying leaps calls. So there's a little something to it, a little special sauce. Actually not really prepared to talk about it, but I think it's better than just buying straight calls on leaps. I think there's some advantages to it, and options are pretty complicated. So maybe one day we'll share a bit more, but we're keeping that one for clients for now.
Yeah, we're still I think a little close to the vest in terms of what we did for clients, but with the benefit of the little bit of hindsight that we have right now, we're feeling pretty happy about how we handled that pretty crazy drawdown to, as Tim Wall said, 225 and dropping.
And dropping.
We didn't perfectly bottom ticket. We did mention April 7th and 8th. We were doing a lot of buying for diversified clients those days. That was like almost a perfect bottom tick for those clients. For Rebellionaire clients, we didn't perfectly bottom ticket as well, but I think still pretty happy with how we were able to manage this overall situation for them.
It was around like 270 or so.
And beyond that, I mean, we've talked a little bit about this in the past, but like for clients, we talked about trimming even before this bit of a downturn. So I think for clients who took our advice, we've done very well for them. So not financial advice. We're just sharing a little bit of what we've done recently for clients, but I think it's been a pretty good year, even though it's been very volatile.
We hope to share more of those stories. So we had Jared on our channel earlier. He's a former Tesla employee, and we talked about his Tesla stock options, but also how we helped him handle some margin and things like that, and do some adding and trimming effectively.
So I know you've got to hit the road here in a second, Bradford. So unless you've got anything else, I think we can wrap it up here and get you on your way.
Yeah. In summary, for the stock gamblers, I think Tesla could continue to rally a bit, but there may be a bit of a gap before the June 1st, and don't be surprised if there is a sell-off the week before June 1st and maybe after, just because people will try to front run the event.
And
be careful
I'll just underline that's not financial advice, especially when we get date specific like that. We're looking at some stuff. Doesn't necessarily mean that's exactly how it's going to play out.
Yeah, so we'll show that disclaimer again when we're done, so you can see that. And he's Matt Smith. I'm Bradford Ferguson. We're with Rebellionaire.com. Check us out. You can learn more there. We just revamped the website to make it a little more simple, easy to digest. And Tesla just revamped their website too. Make it a little.
Oh, they copied us. How dare them?
Totally. Totes bagoat. And with that, I'm going to say bye for now.
Bye for now.